All right. Well, welcome everybody to this event. Tonight, we're going to be talking about meeting your weight goals one joyful bite at a time. We have Dr. Deborah Gill for the fourth time. This is her last installment of her series about joyful eating. And Deborah is a clinical psychologist, PhD from UCLA, who has coached clients for nearly 30 years in long-term weight management. Deborah utilizes a non-diet approach that combines mindfulness, self-care, joy, and self-compassion. She has been featured on television and regularly presents to professional groups and to the public. Dr. Gill runs a psychotherapy practice in addition to her weight coaching business and is a licensed psychologist in both New Jersey and Florida. So Deb put up her little bio there as well. I want to thank you, Deb, for joining us for the fourth time, and I'm going to kick it over to you. Thanks, Deb.
Okay, thank you. So I see Diana, Marie, Vicky, Mary, and Vicky, and you said there's someone else, Shauna? Why don't I not see that person? Are those the four people that are here? Okay, well, I can't hear you, Dan, but I'm going to start. So, okay.
I'm sorry. So I was on mute. The attendees that you probably can't see, the attendees are Mary, Vicky, and Shauna.
I see participants. Now I see it.
There's two different things. And then the participants is me, you, and Deanna.
I see. Okay, gotcha. All right. So I just wanted to give a brief, just so you all know why I do this, why I have 4 presentations about weight management. This picture is me when I was 9.5 years old. And in that time, in the 1970s, there weren't that many, we weren't talking about overweight kids and that kind of thing. And I definitely experienced what you might imagine being like the one kid who was the little chubby kid in the group, like a little bit of teasing, all that kind of stuff. And the reason I just want to tell you is I was from a family that didn't really like overweight, let's just say. And my mom, I think, had my best interest at heart and probably wanted me to have what in today's world we would call thin privilege. And she told me that if I didn't lose weight, she would have me go to like a weight loss camp the following year instead of this summer camp. And I ended up going on Weight Watchers when I was in about 5th grade. And I was very conscientious and good at following the Weight Watchers plan, but and I did lose weight, but the problem was it became too much of an obsession with me, and I developed some symptoms that might be similar to anorexia nervosa. And then at some point, I didn't like being that skinny. I luckily was not a depressed person, and I was able to start eating a little more, but then I became over obsessed with exercise. And then when I was in college, they had foods that we never had available in our house, like cookies and ice cream and things like that. And I began to plan where I would eat. I don't know if it was exactly a binge, but it was definitely like overeating with a plan to purge the food that I was eating. And I was still in this whole restrictive diet mindset. And so that was all the way from my like 5th grade Weight Watchers youth program all the way through college. And for a couple of years, and then I went to graduate school in 1992. And by the time I was in graduate school, I remember saying to myself, like, I have so much obsession with thinking about what I'm going to eat and worrying about whether it's going to make me gain weight back, et cetera, that if I could just find a way to not have all this stuff in my mind, I feel like I would have so much more room to think about other things and do other things, and I would just be so much happier. And I luckily was saying these things to myself at the very same time that a movement was kind of starting. And there are a number of people that started writing about the problem with dieting, the exact problem that I had, which was that over restriction leads to a lot of problems with overeating or problems with obsessiveness. And they were writing about alternatives to using that kind of approach to weight management. And one book came out that kind of was influenced by all these other writers called Intuitive Eating. And that book influenced me so much. And I started doing a lot of the things in that book. So I kind of realized that that could work for me, that there would be a way to manage my weight for the rest of my life without having to be on a diet. And I decided, since I was in graduate school for clinical psychology, that if I could make this work and really get to a place where I understood it, I could teach it, that's what I would do as my career. So that's what I decided to do. And ever since then, which was around 1995, I dedicated my career to working with weight management and then what became eating disorder treatment, using very similar approaches, weight management, eating disorders, because it's like preventing eating disorders as well as treating them. So what I'm going to teach you today is my current, where I am now, how everything is developed, and how I've been influenced over the years working in the field of like obesity treatment, kids, weight management treatment, working with eating disorders, including bulimia, anorexia, binge eating, and all other kind of disordered or mindless eating. So that's what this series that I have developed, I'm trying to forward my slide. For some reason, it's not, doesn't always go consistently. I'm not sure why. Hold on. There. Okay. So this is the 4 talks that Dan was referring to. And the talk series utilizing joyful and aware self-care. So, and I will explain the relationship between those, but essentially this talk is the first one, Joyful Bites. That's the one I'm going to be doing for you tonight. That has to do with savoring your food. And then the talk I gave a few times ago was called The Hunger Game. It was about identifying hunger and other urges to eat that aren't necessarily hunger. It was about hunger imposters. And then this idea of wise mind, and the idea that when you're in a state of mind that's very impulsive or addictive, the only way to really, that it's really important to change that state of mind before you can make good decisions. And I talked a lot and taught a way of changing your state of mind to be in a wise mind where you cared about your own best interests. And then Sneaky Saboteurs was the very first talk I gave, which was about stress and sleep and aging, and how these make weight management harder, no matter what diet approach you're using or what exercise approach, well, what diet approach you're using, and how to manage these things. So these are the previous talks that Dan has recordings of if you wanted to be able to see them. So the basic concept, one of the basic concepts I want you to walk away with today is that if you can get more joy for every bite of food that you eat, that means you will need fewer bites to feel satisfied. If you have fewer bites to feel satisfied, that means you take in fewer calories to feel satisfied. So the idea is that you will get satisfaction with the meal and more joy, and you can stop eating when you feel satisfied or full, and you won't feel a sense of deprivation. So joyful eating is, another word for that would be savoring. So savoring means paying attention and then really appreciating all the sensations. So taking in the sight of food even before it enters your mouth, especially when it's prepared to look wonderful, like a lot of Japanese food presentations are taking into account that savoring. But really anything you eat, if you look at it and think about it, if you like the food, wow, this is going to taste really good. Like looking at your sandwich even and thinking about how yummy it's going to taste. Starting to get your mind in the idea that it's going to experience pleasure. So that's the idea of pleasant feelings, anticipation. When the food is in your mouth, a lot of what I'm referring to today is the idea of what you're doing with your mind when the food is in your mouth. And that's a question that you want to be asking yourself. Where is my mind when the food's in my mouth? What I'd like for it to be is on the sensations of taste of the food, the feel of the food in your mouth, the sounds of your food. It may sound gross to describe it, but when next time you eat, and maybe I'll invite you guys to participate in this tonight. I don't know if you'll do it, but if you do, it'll be great. You can hear the sounds of your own eating. And that actually adds your brain going, oh, wow, we're really having a satisfying experience. The smell of your food, you can kind of get the smell of your food outside your mouth. And even when it's in your mouth, you kind of like, you can get that aroma from moment to moment. The idea is staying aware and keeping your attention on your mouth. So what most people do is that they put the food in their mouth, and immediately, the very first moment the food passes your lips, you're aware of the taste of it. And then the attention wanders to something else. So the goal that I want you to focus on, if you want to use this skill, is that every time you have any food in your mouth, you're going to be paying attention the whole time that your food is in your mouth, all the way until the point where you have the intention to swallow the food. So that means you can't be thinking about other things. You can't be even thinking about, you know, what you have to do next, or even about your next bite. You want to be thinking about how good this tastes and feels when you eat it. And there's something else you could notice, which is there's like pleasure centers in your brain that, with the right combination of like fat and carbohydrates and maybe a little salt, you can really almost feel the pleasure, almost like you're getting massaged. You can feel that too. And that's just something that when you're trying it, you might pay attention to see if that works for you. So I'm going to invite you guys to practice this. So if you want to, in your own home, when you're listening to this, if you want to go get something like maybe a nut, or maybe like a chocolate covered raisin, or something that you might have in your house that might be a food that has some fat in it to give you some flavor. It could be something without fat, like a raisin, but if you have something that you can practice this with, it would be a much more fun night for you if you can get that. If you have an M&M or a peanut M&M, or like anything like that that you might want to eat, if you happen to have ice cream and you could take like a scoop of it out to eat, that would work well. You could do it with peanut butter. You could do it with like peanut butter spread on a little sandwich or cracker. Just having a cracker, just having a piece of cheese. I'm giving you a lot of options, but if you want to go and get that while you're listening, that could be a fun thing, because we're going to try the mindful eating together. It's going to be way more fun if you do that. Okay, so I just wanted to mention that when I say, when you eat, just eat, you know, I was saying all your attention, you want it to be in your mouth. This is a very deliberate change from the way that a lot of us eat often. Sometimes we eat while we're watching TV, as you can see she's doing. Sometimes eat while you're working. Sometimes eat while you're talking on the phone. You could be eating. Sometimes you could eat while you drive and pay attention to the food if you're driving on automatic pilot. But much of the time, if you eat when you drive, you're not necessarily paying attention to the food. So I want to just kind of call your attention that part of getting the joy is not thinking about these other things. Again, where is your mind when the food is in your mouth? Okay. I want to bring this up because I know that people will have this question, which is, how do you do this kind of eating when you're eating with other people? Because when you're eating with other people, there's conversation going on. As you can see from this picture, right? People are talking and laughing, etc. So there is a strategy for this, and the strategy has to do with alternating your attention between the social interaction and the sensations in your mouth. So if you're talking with people in a group like this, in this kind of like party where there's a lot of people, there's often moments where 2 or 3 people are having a conversation and you are paying attention, but it's not like you're like totally engaged in the topic necessarily. That might be a time where you say, oh, now's the time to take a bite. I can focus at least 75% of my attention on what's in my mouth. You know, it's never going to be 100% of your attention when you're out, because there's just so much going on. But if you can focus like a good amount of your attention on your mouth the whole time, then maybe when you finish that bite, you don't take another bite until you decide whether you want to participate in the conversation. So a lot of times when you're eating with other people, well, if you're mindlessly eating and not paying attention at all, you might eat more when you're eating with other people. But if you're practicing joyful eating, you might actually eat less when you're out, because you're only going to eat when you can actually pay attention. It's when you're with a single other person, so it's like kind of on you and the other person to be having the conversation. You might actually say to your person, wait, hold on a second, let's just take a few bites before we finish the conversation, because I really want to taste my food. I mean, it's very easy to do with your friends, especially if you guys are all hungry if you and someone else is really hungry. So I just want to mention this because it's something, this is not easy. These things I'm talking about are skills, but just like dieting requires some effort and some skill, like restricting, here you don't need to diet, but it does require practicing the skill. And the difference between this and practicing dieting is that this is pure joy. If you're eating food that you like and you pay attention when it's in your mouth, all you do is enhance your joy by doing this skill. That's what I mean by make wise decisions about when you take a bite. You want to be thinking, I'm going to only take a bite when I can pay attention. Okay. I want to just give you this general sense of this approach, just so you understand why I'm calling it joyful, aware self-care. And I'm actually this slide I'm going to rearrange, but here's the relationship between these things. Awareness is really the core, and self-care is ultimately what all the results are. If you're aware of the sensations in your mouth, you're going to have joy. If you're aware of your body appetite, like how hungry you are, how full you are, you're going to have comfort and you're going to have the right amount of energy. If you're aware of nutritional needs that you might have, and you're aware of, like, gently aware of what are nutritious foods, you can have health. If you're aware of what your body needs generally, like sleep and stress management, you can have peace of mind. So the idea is that awareness pointed to different things will create joy and self-care. Before we do a trial, if you guys want to participate, and I'm going to ask you to say whether you're going to participate or not, because I'm not going to spend time if you're not, but I want you to also think about how hungry you are right now. So a second skill I want you to come away with, besides joyful eating and savoring, is the idea of paying attention to your hunger and your fullness. So I want you to think about right now on this scale, how hungry would you be? So this scale goes from, let's say, neutral, 5, is comfortable, you're neither hungry nor full. And as you go down from 5 to 4, you get to slightly hungry, and then to clear signals of hunger. All food usually tastes really good when you're at a 3. So I always think about 3 being kind of the starting point for eating, as you can see over here. Clear signals, we'll talk about them in a minute, well, actually, I can just show you. These are some of the things that you might get, the indications of hunger, right? So you might get pulling or growling sensations, churning. You don't want it to be so intense that it's a 2, but you want it to be like a 3. So if you go back, a 2 would be uncomfortable hunger, where you're getting weak or lightheaded or shaky. You really like, oh, you're almost desperate to eat. That's a 2. And 1 is like super painfully hungry. And then it sometimes just becomes numbness. Like if you go for more than 7 hours without eating, you probably don't even feel hungry anymore. Your body gets into survival mode. So this is the hunger side of the scale. We'll talk about the fullness side of the scale in a minute, but I want you to kind of get a sense of where you are right now. Like, are you at a 5? Are you at a 4? You know, it's some people may have just eaten some dinner. Some people may have not eaten yet and you're feeling hungry. So I just want you to decide for yourself where you are in that. Again, here are some of the hunger sensations. Notice here, motivation to eat. When you are hungry, you're going to have actually a high motivation from vegetables and fruits. It's even a way to determine whether you're hungry, which is another talk that I gave in this group. But one of the great things to ask yourself is, if I walked into a room and there was a bowl full of carrots or apples or something, would I reach for it? Or would I just sit down and talk to my friend? You know, would I have these carrots right now or not? And if you're only hungry for donuts, but you're not really hungry for carrots, you might question whether you're hungry. You know, you might actually be having another need that's not necessarily hunger. That's what we meant by the hunger imposters. Okay, so if you are going to pay attention to this, and I just want to No, so maybe in the, whether it's the chat or the Q&A, if you can, you ate a 7 because you just ate. Great, Mary. Okay, so in the Q&A, if you want to type in where you're at, that would be great. If you want to type in where you're at right now. And I also want to type in the question, you to type the question, are you going to practice this? If enough people want to practice with me, then we're going to do it. So do I write the question?
No, Mary
Okay.
wrote, I'm at a 7 because I
Right,
just ate.
right. She wrote that.
Deanna,
Nobody else.
Deanna said 5.
Okay, good. Okay, I'm not seeing that part, so that's good.
I'm unable to type in anything. It says the chat is disabled. I don't know
You
why.
have to go to the Q&A button, Vicky, at the bottom.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
There you
Q&A.
go.
So just type in. Okay. 5 is neutral. Okay. Good, Shauna. I just went to get ice cream, so I missed the basis of the question. Good, good. I'm glad you went to get your ice cream. The question was based on this scale. Let me go back to it if I can. On this scale, how hungry are you? Going from 5 down to 1. Or maybe you're even in fullness, just sort of in the fullness side of the scale, which I haven't gone over yet. Where do you think you are? Are you in the hunger zone, or you feel like you're either not hungry or not full, or in the slightly full zone? That's what I'm asking. You're a 3. Excellent. Okay. All right. So let's start now. Since I know at least Shauna went to get ice cream, that's awesome. So here we go. I want us to practice. So when you take the food, I want you to start right before you even put the food in your mouth, and go ahead and take the scoop or the serving or whatever you're going to put in your mouth, and just notice it, and notice any anticipation or excitement or positive feelings that you might have towards eating this food. And then go ahead and put it in your mouth and see if you can keep it there a little bit and focus your mind on these sensations, like the taste, the feel in your mouth. You might notice there's like a sound of almost like sucking in the flavor. Notice those things. And before you swallow it, ice cream is usually pretty quick, but yet it gets all over your whole mouth. And then you're going to have this moment where you know that you're ready to swallow. And I want you to say to yourself, okay, I've had that bite, now I'm going to swallow. And if you're eating something in particular, if you're eating something that has fat in it, you're probably going to you might notice this pleasure center part. There's part of our brain when you eat something like chocolate or anything, all those things I mentioned earlier, the pleasure of your brain could be activated. Some people can really tune into that and notice it. Some people, it may take a while to practice noting that, but I just want you to know that it's there. And usually it's when the food hits like the upper back palate of your mouth, like right before you swallow, is often where you get that pleasure hitting your brain.
So Deb, I asked people to unmute, and is that okay if they go
Yes,
off mute and speak to you instead of typing
exactly.
in there?
That
Okay.
would be much better. Yeah. So I want people to, now people can tell me, how does this differ from the experience that you've had before eating? Like, sorry, from your previous all the time experiences of eating. How is this different for you? What did you notice?
Honestly, if this was like any other time, I probably would have finished the ice cream already,
Right.
even though I just got it. I'm very bad at like savoring taste, especially when I'm hungry. I tend to rush and eat my food just to hurry to fill my belly. And I tend to eat very fast, no matter what.
Okay.
But it's usually faster when I'm hungry.
Yes. And I'm going to also suggest that, first of all, I'm really glad, and I hope that this might encourage you to spend more time it's not about eating slow. It's about taking the time to experience the savoring,
Mhm.
right? And I only say that because, you know, there's a lot of things where people say, chew your food for 30 seconds, blah, 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 you know, like as if it's like a trick, but it's
Right.
not a trick. Like I just want to say to everybody, it's kind of like the idea is you need the time if you want to get more units of pleasure from the food. You need the time and you need the attention on it. And I also want to say it's possible, Shauna, that you may, instead of being at a 2, at a 3, it's possible that maybe you were at a 2, which is a little bit more extreme
Mhm.
hunger. So if you look at like uncomfortably hungry, it's possible you are heading toward a 2. If you feel like you can't wait any longer, you
Mhm.
might be eating a little bit late. You know, like if
Right.
that happens frequently for you, it might be that you're a little bit past the point where you want to start eating. If that makes sense.
Yes.
Um,
I've thought
yeah,
of that as well.
yeah. So
Yeah.
as you guys, so now it's hard for me to talk and be telling you to pay attention to your food, right? I don't want you to, so do another bite. You guys have another bite. And during this bite, I want you to notice what's on this slide and go ahead and pay attention to these kinds of things. If anybody wants to share what they noticed for themselves, like what are the things you're paying attention to and what did you actually notice? Oh.
I had I know exactly what you're talking about because for myself, I love to cook. And I'm all into the experience of smelling and the sizzle of the food. I get all into that. My problem is, and you had mentioned it, sometimes I wait too long to eat. Like I'm at a 2. And so what I do, so I do not overeat. I try
Yeah.
to grab an apple. This is a thing I used to do when I was on Weight Watchers. I
Uh-huh.
grab an apple and eat that just to appease my extremely hunger, that shaky feeling,
Yep.
so I wouldn't overeat anything else. So I try to have fruit around the house, especially an apple, just a small apple. I'll eat that. If not, I'm in a really bad mood, or I'm not at my best, I grab a bag of chips because I like salty and savory things, and that's my weakness. And I'll eat chips, and I try to avoid from having it in the house. I did that at a time when I lost a lot of weight. And I know the habits that I'm doing, but you're going along the line of eating is an experience that should be savored and is an activity that should not be like just shoveling food like a Ferris wheel, with the spoon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I like that, like a Ferris wheel. Yes, exactly.
So
love
I
that.
appreciate everything you're saying. I mean, and I'm so glad that you're talking about this again because food is an experience. And I know the thing about the social interactions, like I was just at a thing at a brunch, and I saw myself doing that. I was just eating and talking, and I was tasting the food, but I wasn't conscious of my eating, like I'm just shoveling it, I'm tasting it and everything. But am I eating till I'm full, or I'm overeating? And lately I've been finding myself, I try not to overeat. I've been trying to be conscious of am I physically hungry or emotionally hungry?
Great questions. Yeah, and that we talked about that a lot the last time in our last session about different kinds of hunger, or what we call hunger. We call them hunger imposters. I love that. And I think when you're emotionally hungry, what you want to do is ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? And what do I need? And often it's not
Exactly.
food that you need. Yeah. And I actually want everybody to really pay attention to was it Vicky who's talking? Is it Vicky who's talking?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I want everybody to understand that to take in what she said about the apple thing. I recommend very similar thing. You want to, if you're at a 2 and you really can't pay attention, you want the first food that you eat, if you know you really can't savor it all that well and you're going to eat it fast, it's better for it to be something that's not going to cause you damage. So if you can, in my case, it's usually like I call home and I'm like, can you throw the broccoli in the microwave so I can have it when I get home or something, like, or an apple is a great example, or carrots or something like that. And what you want to do is try not to have it with like a big dip that's high calorie. Like if you're going to say the first thing you're going to eat is carrots and hummus, you could end up eating the entire thing of hummus. So I'm talking about just having a fruit or a vegetable, as Shauna was saying, and that just brings you from a 2 to a 3. And then, because you're sort of being realistic and accepting, you know what, I'm not at a place where I can actually savor right now. I just need to make my brain know that there's nutrition coming, energy coming, and my blood sugar is going to be calmer. And then you can start to savor and pick something with the proteins and all the stuff you want to eat for your meal. So
I did the same thing. This is Mary speaking.
hi, Mary.
So earlier when I got home, I was very hungry. I didn't think I was, but then when I got into the kitchen, I was like, ooh, I'm really hungry. And it was going to take me a little while just to get like my vegetables cut up and everything. And I really wasn't sure what it was that I was going to cook. And so what I did is I grabbed some cashews, and I grabbed a handful of cashews and I started eating those. And then I figured out what it was that I was going to eat, and I took everything out and I started, I just bought a wok. So I had some bok choy, and which is something new for me because I'm getting a food share now. And I had some steak. So I kind of put that all together. And as I was cooking it, in my wok, I was like, oh, like it smelled really delicious. And I was kind of putting like garlic and just all those smells. I was kind of like, ooh, this is going to be really good. And then when I finally sat down to eat, I was like, all I could think of was like, ooh, this is really good. Like in my mind, because one, I was hungry, but just having a few of those cashews kind of like settled me a little bit, that I could prepare my food. And then as I was eating, I was by myself at the table and I was eating and I was like, ooh, this steak is really good. Oh, this bok choy is really like, like I was savoring my food. And I was thinking that this meal is really good,
Yes.
where usually, you just eat, like I find myself doing a lot of stress eating. And, I look for the first thing I can find. And usually it's chips, something salty, just to kind of take that edge away. But tonight I do have to say that I was just like thinking, oh my God, this is really good.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm glad you had that experience, and I'm glad that you saw that you could take the edge off with the cashews. And I think I would just say, it doesn't sound like you felt at risk for overeating the cashews, but a lot of times if you have something really dense like that, you might end up eating so many cashews so fast. For some people, you may not, like if you only take 3 or 4 cashews out and you're like, okay, this is definitely enough calories to like calm me. And if I eat them, I'll be in a better space to eat my bok choy meal. But for some people, that would be a little bit dangerous because they might eat more than 3 or 4 cashews. They might eat a whole bunch. And by the time they finish it, they may not even be hungry for dinner. Or they might feel like if they ate dinner. So I'm not saying that it's bad to do that. I'm just saying you have to know yourself and know whether you're capable of eating cashews at the time of 2, of being a 2 on the scale, because does that make sense? So Mary was able to do it, but that for some people that might be risky because cashews are they're fantastically nutritious and delicious, but they are very high in calorie density. So if you end up eating 10, that's already a lot for like a but that's okay. If you want to include that in your dinner, there's no problem with that because you didn't, it took too long to cook. And if you waited to cook before you ate anything, it would have been too long. right? So
Right.
I'm not
Right.
saying it was a bad strategy. I just want people to think about that.
And
just
normally, Deb, I would grab more. Like I just grabbed that handful and I actually wanted more. I wanted to continue eating cashews, but I knew I was cooking, so I didn't want to really like make cashews my dinner. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I kind of was able to stop and be like, no, I got to finish this dinner and eat, you know. But
Yeah.
normally I would have eaten more of the cashews, you know.
Yeah, got it. Okay. All right.
I struggle
All
with
right.
self-control, so I probably would not have stopped.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who's saying that?
That's this is Shauna.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Does anybody else want to say anything into this discussion?
Just one more thing that I agree with Mary. If if I do the same thing, I try to grab a little bit of something like with the apple. And so I got to be mindful too about the chips. And I heard us talk about the chips. That's my thing go to also. And I said,
Mhm.
what the hell am I eating these chips when I know I'm going to eat a meal?
Right.
You know, so I am so related to you with that, Mary.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yep, exactly. So as you start to eat your food, then you sort of get into this other side of the scale, right? The idea that you're going to be paying attention. Like if we were sitting and all eating a meal together, we would be thinking, when am I getting to the place of 5? Like, when do I get to where I don't feel hunger anymore? And if you're having a snack, I want you to be thinking of defining a snack as going from a 3 to a 5. I'm going to actually talk about this because, and then a meal going from a 3 to a 7, where you have clear fullness. This would be, you don't feel uncomfortable at all, but you have enough energy for your food to last you for a while. If you start to get past a 7, I put this picture, we're not in the self-care zone anymore. You know, it's like this baby has had enough. The mother's still trying to feed it. If you imagine, I put this picture there so you can imagine it whenever you are eating beyond what your body really needs. I want you to think, this is what I'm doing to myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. This picture. I mean, I don't know if it feels that way to you, but to me, it feels like this baby is saying, like, I have had enough. You know, I don't want any more. Does it feel like that to you guys?
Yes.
I'm
what it looks
usually
like?
at that point too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, but you see, this is the thing, and I think we've been embedded with this type of how you say, mentality of eating is that you have to empty the plate. At least I was raised that way.
Yeah.
And it always goes beyond the fact that I didn't understand my fullness until I
Mhm.
became an adult and saying, okay, I'm really stuffed. Like I've been to places and, you know, barbecues and whatnot, and people rolling out, that's rubbing their belly because that's ate to the max. And that's a very uncomfortable feeling. And I don't like feeling that way either. But it's always been embedded in me to finish what you've eaten. And I see, and I think the babies are the most intelligent people when it comes down to eating, because they know they don't want any more. Or I don't like that. And we
Exactly.
still eat even
Yeah.
when we are full, you
Yep.
know, because we
Yep.
didn't empty that plate.
Right.
Exactly. And I want you guys to let go of that clear your plate idea. That is so counter to joyful, aware self-care. It is not self-care. And I want you all to kind of think, you are this baby inside of you, and you, the adult version of you that's putting more food in your mouth when you already are full. I want you to think, I don't want to do this to that child inside of me. Like, your body is the dependent child, right? Your body that you have to take care of is going, no, and you're still feeding it more because of your beliefs and things.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
almost, can I say,
Absolutely.
I want to say something too, like, and I don't know if it's subliminal and if restaurants do this on purpose, but they always seem to give you more food than you could actually
Mhm.
eat. And I'm wondering, is the reason why they do that is because obviously they want you to come back, but is that like somehow subliminally reinforcing what some of the ladies were saying here, that we've been kind of brainwashed, or we have this belief that we have to finish everything on our plate, and then it just makes it harder. So even when we go out, we should probably be mindful. Like I forgot who mentioned it about eating an apple before they have a meal. Vicky said that maybe we should have a little snack before we actually go out to eat. So that way we could like take leftovers home and we don't finish
Right.
what's on
Oh,
our
you know
plate.
what? This is a really good point I'm going to mention. Well, first of all, let me just say, one of the things that I want to come back to this, Dan, what you're saying, because it's really important. Actually, I'll go to this. I'll go back to the scale for a second. If you start eating at a 2, this is what you're saying, Dan. If you start eating at a 2, it's much more likely that you're going to get to an 8. The reason is, versus if you start eating at a 3, it's more likely you'll be able to feel your fullness at a 7. When you're at a 2, there's something that happens to our appetite system where it almost takes about 45 minutes to go from hungry to go like, oh, okay, I'm not hungry anymore. And that usually ends up being slightly uncomfortable fullness or even painful. And if you're at a restaurant starting at a 2, you're more likely to get to an 8. So I think what you're saying there, Dan, is that if you eat that apple before, or at least you know that you're not at a 2, you don't have to eat it every time, but if you're at a 2, if you're like hungry at 5 o'clock, but your dinner reservation isn't until 7,
Mhm.
you absolutely should eat something so that by the time you go to dinner, you're not at a 2. You want to eat something so that you get to lay a 5, and then by the time like a 5, like a snack, you're eating a snack like yogurt or an apple, or that's where you can have like an apple and something. And then you have that 2 hours to go back down to a 3 again. But if you're already at a 3 at 5 o'clock and your dinner's not till 7 or even 6, then you're going to end up being at a 2 by the time you get to the dinner. So exactly what you're saying is good. So you want to make sure that you're not in front of a lot of food when you're below a 3. I mean, when you're below a 3. So that's a really, really good point. And I think I might actually put something like that in there just to like help people. This is something I want to like emphasize, even though it's obvious from the questions and we're just having a snack right now. But if we were eating a meal together, I would want you to stop halfway through the meal. And what this says is why the French don't get fat. It says, I stopped eating because if I had a French accent, because the food, she no longer looks good or something, but I'm not good at accent. But if someone wants to read that with a French accent, yeah. And this guy from Chicago is like, I stopped eating because the plate's empty and the TV show's over, So that's why this guy. So, but this idea, if like there's all this high fat food in France typically, and people are like, why don't they get the same obesity problem as we have in America? But part of that is that they are more trained to stop eating with smaller portions, and the restaurants in France don't have the same big portions that they do in America. We have these kind of portions. So if you get this entire plate of food and you don't stop and ask yourself, like, am I still hungry? You're going to end up overeating, most likely. So I wanted to just teach you one thing here, which is a little exercise that is stop. And so I just want you to remember this. Stop means stop, right? The S means stop, and you're asking, how much room do I have before my comfortable stopping point? So let's say you stop about halfway through or third through. T stands for take 2 to 5 deep breaths. The most calming deep breaths you can take is with long exhales. And you can just try like exhaling like twice as long as you inhale. O stands for observe your sensations of hunger and fullness and what urges you have. Like my mouth wants more could be an urge as an example. Also, like we said earlier in the conversation, observe emotions present and ask, what do I need? And then P stands for proceed based on the needs that you observe. And if it's true that you're still in the hunger zone, or if you're not quite comfortably full yet, then you want to eat and still pay attention. So I want you to come away with this skill, stop. And remember, when you're eating a meal at a restaurant or any place where there's a lot of food, just kind of stop like halfway through, no matter what, even if you're eating at home, and say, where am I on the scale? Where am I on my hunger fullness scale? And how full should you be at the end of the meal? So I've already mentioned being a 7, but I just kind of wanted to give you a little more. A lot of people eat until an 8, where they're really full. And when you're talking about weight management, stopping a little bit early, like when you're 80% full and not what we think of as 100% full, you can feel a comfortable pressure of the food in your stomach, but you don't feel that your stomach is being stretched. This may take some practice. You know, sometimes some of the research shows it takes 15 to 20 meals to get used to stopping earlier. So you're going to feel a little bit uncomfortable, like I have a desire to eat more. So I just want to warn you guys, if you're doing that, to just think about this. Like, if you're stopping at 80% full for a while, it might feel like you quite have enough, but if you wait a few minutes, it'll feel okay. And then you'll start getting used to stopping earlier. So that's for practice. I want you to try eating half of what's on your plate and then stopping to check in with your fullness. Okay. And you might ask yourself at halfway through, or once you get to that halfway point, keep stopping and saying, all right, how many more bites till I'm at a 7? How many more bites till I get to that comfortable fullness place? Any questions about that?
No,
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So when you stop halfway through, is there like a study or that says you should wait like 10 minutes or 15 minutes, or is it everybody's digestive system is different? Like, how long
Oh,
should
when
you
I say
wait?
the stopping halfway through is just a stop to take some breaths and pay attention. It's not like a stopping. It's just to stop yourself from just shoveling it in. Stop
Okay.
the Ferris wheel for a minute and, like, you know, I like that analogy. And then stop and you go, okay, let me just do some breaths. Let me notice. So it's just long enough to take stock of where you are on the scale.
Okay, so like, say if, for instance, then let me try to rephrase the question in a different way.
Okay.
Say, for instance, you eat something, right, and you take a break, right, or you want to save room. Let's just say you want to save room for dessert.
Okay.
Should you like wait 15 minutes or 20 minutes or something to like wait to feel like if you're going to be more, if you're still hungry? Like, is there something like a time limit or something to wait, or it's not, there's no set rule there? Does that make sense, or am I
Yeah.
asking it?
No. Yeah, I see what you're saying. You're saying, like, wait for the food to digest afterwards and see if you're still hungry. I think you could say to yourself, if I stop too early, I could always have more food and I can wait to make that decision. You know, but I think I would say err on the side of stopping sooner rather than later, because after 15 or 20 minutes, you might feel more full. So that's why, so you might even think of stopping when you think you're at like a low 7, but then by the time the food digests, you might be at a higher 7, you know? So that may be what you do, because it does sometimes when the food digests, you get fuller a little bit later after you finished eating. So if you're doing the joyful eating the way I described, you may not have such a need to wait. Like, it's less important to do that 15, 20 minutes of waiting to really see if you're full, because when you involve your brain the way that I'm suggesting, when you involve your mind with every single bite, you're kind of pulling along your awareness of how full you really are. You're pulling it along bite by bite by bite, rather than waiting for the actual food to be digesting, because you're getting messages to your brain. Oh, this tastes really good. Just like the person was saying about appreciating the bok choy. As you say things like, oh, this bok choy looks good. Oh, this tastes great. That's already given you more of that sense of fullness that you would otherwise, if you were eating mindlessly without paying attention, you might not notice any fullness until you waited that 15 or 20 minutes, because the fullness is coming from a different place. It's coming from chemicals that happen after the food starts to digest. Whereas this approach, you're actually feeling the sense of satisfaction with each bite growing and growing and growing. So it's like you actually feel fullness differently when you do mindful eating than when you do mindless eating. That's a really, really good question. Yeah, I hope that makes sense to people. And I really am curious for you guys to practice, and then you can email and let me know if that's true. You know,
Yeah,
Hey,
I-
Bill, can I ask a quick question? You're
Yeah.
saying you should eat until you become a 7 versus a 5 where I'm not like really full, but I'm like satisfied.
when you, yes, so let me go back to that scale for a second so you can see why. Okay. See how I put on here eating ends at a snack at a 5 and it ends at a meal of a 7. So the difference between a snack and a meal, actually, I put this, I think I have it as the very next slide. The order of these slides are hard because I want you to know everything at once. But so a meal will last you 2 to 4 hours or so. Okay, so you're eating the meal until you're comfortably full at a 7. But a snack might even last you 15 minutes to like an hour and a half. So when you eat a snack, you want to think, I'm just trying to make my hunger go away so that I'm not starving when I eat, right? I'm not waiting so long. So you're basically getting to that. So the snack, you'll go to a 5 because it only lasts a short time. So sometimes people define this idea of snack as a type of food, but I'm trying to get you to think of it as a different stopping point, a different amount of food. And it's meant to be between meals. Does that answer the question?
Yes, because I guess
Yeah.
eating to 7 is going to hold you over longer versus eating
Exactly.
till you get to a 5. Okay.
Exactly. Right.
Thank you.
Exactly. Because it takes your belly longer to digest it and all that stuff. Okay. So it's really good. I'm glad you asked that question. Okay. And that's really what I wanted to communicate today. So this is part of, the hunger part of things. I wanted to teach you about joyful bites and the idea of fullness today. And the other slides you can look at have to do with like really looking at whether you're hungry, the questions you guys were asking about that. And I wanted to I'm going to leave this up here so you guys can just really take it in. And I wanted to see if you have any other questions that we didn't cover. That's kind of the main stuff that I wanted to cover. And I'll just like open it up for that.
I'm definitely gonna try to practice that next time I have dinner or I go out to a restaurant, because I just eat the whole thing. Like there's never a time that I will go to a restaurant or even at home. I'll just keep eating till my plate is empty. Not even like thinking, oh, am I full? Am I full yet? Or am I so hungry? Like I just eat. It's like I'm on autopilot, and I finish everything on the plate. And when I get up, I'm like, oh my God, I ate too much. I shouldn't have eaten this much, because I'm uncomfortable. I'm like at an 8, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I find myself doing that a lot. And that's why I'm in the predicament I'm in, because I'm just constantly overeating, not thinking about what it is and not savoring my meal, just on autopilot, just eating. And, and in the past I have, and this is something I don't practice a lot, but, or hardly ever, but I have in the past where I've gone to a restaurant and actually asked for a box, like before my meal even came, or when my meal came, so that I could put some of it in the box and just eat half of it, with the mindset of, I don't really need to eat all of this. I could probably save half of it and just have it for lunch tomorrow, but most of the time it's just eating everything that's on that plate.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have
I-
we have to
and I-
pretend we're French.
Yes, pretend you're French. Exactly. Pretend you're French. Yes, I put, yeah, I mean, this slide is really important. The reasons why, like the whole idea of using your own body, we have this natural built-in portion control, and that's how you can manage your weight without being on a diet. If you listen to the stopping point. And then also you're going to have all these benefits, like you're going to feel energized and comfortable instead of feeling stuffed and like you're like weighed down.
Mhm.
You
You
know,
know what? I've been where Mary is, like when she talked about when eating until you're almost unconscious. And the thing is that I've been more present in that of eating. Like when I go to the restaurant, I'm not eating, except that last time at the brunch, I just went crazy. But nevertheless, most of the time I am taking food home, and I do have a refrigerator full of leftovers. But the thing is that when I do eat and I finish my plate and I know I shouldn't go for seconds, and I do, I have to ask myself, what happened today that I'm eating like a piglet?
Ooh, that's a good
Because
question, Vicky.
there is something going
Yeah.
on that I have to appease myself with food to the extent that I'm unconscious.
yes, yes. This is so when you're about to start eating, you also want to do the stop. You want to say, why am I eating? You know, and then you observe the emotions that are present. What do I really need? Because maybe it's not food. Like if you're asking yourself, am I actually even in the hunger part of the scale? Right. And then if you are in the hunger part of the scale, when you start eating, you want to make sure you stay mindful and make it about eating to get energized and not just like, yes, I am hungry, because you could be hungry, but also not be mindful, like, and not being able to take in the joy, and you're just eating to deal with your emotions. So you want to, always want to be eating for the sake of getting yourself the pleasure and meeting your nutritional needs. And if you know that there's other emotions present, you just need to be aware and try to stay present with the eating. And it's not like you can't soothe yourself, but you want to soothe yourself by absorbing yourself into the sensations of the food rather than using the food to escape out of the emotion. So let's say I'm sad and I'm feeling sad and I eat something like carbohydrate because I happen to be hungry and I want my brain to be soothed. There's no problem with that. But I want to, when I eat that, I want to be like, oh, yes, it tastes really good to eat this, whatever it is right now, sandwich or something like that, or pretzel or whatever it is. I want to eat that because it's going to make me feel soothed, but I'm going to really taste the food when I'm eating it. I'm not going to use the pretzel to space out or trance out and like not feel what I'm feeling.
I also take the time, and like when you mentioned you first came on, you talked about you'd be thinking about food all the time. I go to bed thinking about what I should eat tomorrow that is not gonna send the scale over to the extra 5 pounds. So I always have to be mindful of what I'm going to eat and to make sure that I eat something that I will enjoy. You made a good point about whether eating the pretzels or the chips or what have you to appease that hunger, but it's not really what I wanted to eat and enjoy. And I've been trying to get my headspace into that, trying to enjoy the food that I'm eating and not wasting it on other crap that I shouldn't be eating.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is true. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
So I want to say one thing. One of the benefits of doing this mindful eating, this joyful eating, is that you don't have to be as attentive to the what of what you're eating, in the sense of saying, I shouldn't have this food or that food. You just want to make sure that when you do eat the food, you're paying attention so that you get every ounce of pleasure there is. And maybe you would only eat a few bites of it if it's a very high calorie food, or maybe you will only have a smaller amount compared to what you would have now because it is maybe a higher calorie food or something like that. In other words, when you think about, I like that you said what you're thinking about is what will I actually enjoy? Some people would obsess and think about what's a low calorie food that I can eat. And I want to just kind of say that when you do this kind of eating and you really pay attention, all foods can fit in your plan. I mean, I would prefer that 80% of the time the foods are like actual food as opposed to like only processed foods. You know, maybe save that for about 20% of the time. But I think I'm just trying to get to the point that you're not focused so much on the what and more on the how. How you're eating, when you start eating, when you stop eating. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, it does.
Okay,
Yeah, I
good.
follow you on that, yeah.
Good. Okay. Excellent. Any other thoughts or questions?
I-
Um,
Oh, go ahead, Shauna.
sorry. My
Yeah.
aside from not eating on time, where I do get hungry, like right now, I tend to stress eat a lot. And even when I know I'm not hungry, if
Yeah.
something upsets me or if I'm having a bad day at work, I just turn to finding something to munch on. And it's not always healthy because I like crunchy, salty chips. Like I have a specific chip that I really like, and I try not to buy it just because I know would be my go-to. Um,
I'm right there with you, Shayna. I got my Wise onion and garlic
no,
chips.
me it's the popcorners, kettle corn flavor.
Oh,
And
yes.
honestly, I just ate a bag in a day. One of the big bags, even the
Yeah.
BJ size bags. I remember eating one of those in just a day. And that is horrible. I know it tastes good, but that is horrible. So I tend to stress eat a lot. When I get upset or when I'm stressed, I just turn to eat. And I don't know, Dr. Gill, if you can, I've Googled this, and I guess what I've read is that when it comes to stress, eating something crunchy, I don't know, maybe the crunch, it might give some relief. And I find that it has to be crunchy, as it doesn't do anything for me. And
That's the
it's not
same with
just
me.
any crunch though. It's not
Okay,
like
let me,
apples. Oh, go ahead.
what do you think, based on what I've said today, what do
Mhm.
you think would be the answer? Like the first thing you want to ask yourself when you're feeling stressed and you're wanting to eat food, what would be the first thing you want to ask
To
yourself?
stop and think if whether I'm actually hungry, and
Right,
why do I need to eat? Am I
exactly,
hungry because I want to eat because I'm hungry, or am I eat because of that emotional hunger, as was mentioned
exactly,
earlier?
exactly. And if you just do that, if you do the stop, you will be able to like make a decision that's better and what is really good for your stress. And you might think, well, maybe food is not, when I was talking about eating the food to soothe your sadness or your stress or your emotion, that was in the case that you really are hungry. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're not hungry, food would not be the thing to eat. You want to meet your need with some other thing. And
Right.
you might even want to try to get calm before you even make a decision about, right? Like, even if you were hungry, you might think, let me calm myself first because
Mm-hmm.
I want to be able to be present when I eat. I don't want to be like stressed out, So you might do some breathing or take a
I'm
shower.
working on that part.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of stress management. There's so many things that you could do, but if you can stop and the issue is going to be for most people that the immediate habit that you've practiced your whole life is turning to food when you feel stress. Your brain is going to say, I know what to do when I'm in this state of mind. Let's eat. Like that is just the habit. That's like almost the addiction is you have like stress, then your brain goes, oh, food makes stress better. And then you turn to eating and it's going to give you that urge. So what I
Right.
want you to do is just stop and say, is eating really the best way to deal with the stress? Or can I try to deal with the stress a little bit differently? And then maybe I can get it relaxed enough to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know what Shayna's talking about because I'm the salty, savory, crunchy thing. And when I'm stressed out, I really have to be conscious of what I'm doing. And like, I sometimes try to say, okay, is there something else can I do? Like, should I read? Should I go into another room, leave the kitchen completely? So I mean, it works sometimes. It doesn't work all the time. I
Right.
admit to that. but I try to make a conscious effort in recognizing why I'm eating and why I'm going for that crunchy, salty chips. I try to make a conscious effort of why I'm going there.
Great.
And
So
not to-
I want to respect your time, Deborah, because I
Mhm.
know that you have a limited amount of time. I see that you put your slide up here, which shows how people could get in touch with you if they want to work with you. Do you offer like group coaching in your practice because this is almost feels like a group coaching thing. And I'm wondering, do you have like group coaching, or do you have something that people could learn these different skills? Because we could probably be on here forever. I'm sure there's so much more that people need to learn about
Yeah.
how to do this, and but I want to respect your time.
Yeah. Well, definitely, like if two people called me and said that they want to like share a 45-minute session, and like if they were friends and they wanted to like do it together, like I'd be very happy to do that. That's no problem at all. So, and then they could just split the fee or whatever, which we can talk about, when they call. But yeah, that's no problem at all. So that kind of weight coaching, if you got a group together, I'd be very happy to do something like that. And we could figure that out. So yeah.
Okay. And this is where they could go to your website, and there's intake forms there and things of
Yes.
that nature.
Exactly. There's a form there's on the contact page of my website. There is a form you can fill out, and it will come right to me, and then it'll have your contact information on it, and then I can respond.
Great.
Yeah. And you're welcome to
This
text me
is
also. I'm happy for you to text me if you want to. I use this number for my work text, so feel free.
Great.
I'm pulling up the website. It's not coming up.
www.deborahgill.com.
Uh-huh.
I think it may be, let me do something
Let
really
me
quick.
see. It came through. I think it's the block on my computer.
Oh, good. Okay.
Mhm.
That's a shortcut. My website actually is Eating Disorder Therapist NJ. It comes up.
Oh yeah,
as-
that's what I'm seeing now.
Yep. There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dan, for this opportunity to talk with people and hear their questions. I'm really glad. I hope it really helps people.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
definitely. No problem, Deb. It's great. It's great to have you. And I really appreciate the fact that you've been a guest 4 times and shared, your wisdom and your knowledge. And I do believe I messed up on one recording. I didn't get the recording. But if you guys want to DM me individually through the meetup group, there are other recordings from the other meetups, and I could definitely pass those on to you. Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
What
That would be
is your meetup group, Dan?
Say again.
Because
I'm sorry.
what is your meetup group? Because I got this through looking at events and things of my interest, and it came up, and I didn't know what exactly your group was. Is it holistic?
Holistic Wellcare Advisors
Okay.
is the name of the group. And I have weekly meetings, 4 a month, with various different speakers. And I also host meetings as well and do topics such as self-centered fear, unrealistic expectations, trauma, gratitude, talk about the microbiome. Just a little bit about me. I am a certified positive psychology practitioner, also integrative nutrition coach, transformational mindset coach. So those are some of the topics that I cover as well.
Okay.
great.
Okay.
Nice.
All right. Well, thanks, Deb. And
Okay.
thank you all for attending the meeting. And hopefully we'll see you next week at the next meeting.
Great.
Thank you for having
Thank you.
us.
Thank
Bye.
All
you.
right.
Thank
Take care,
you so
everybody.
much.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.